We'll insert our L cassette now for Omnimotion stitching. The programmed utility mending stitches L1, 2, 3, 11, 12, and 13 will sew in 4 directions. An arrow will appear on the program display to indicate the sewing direction, and touching reverse will change direction. Let's sew now using a piece of denim fabric. Cut a small square patch from another piece of denim. Enter woven heavy on your sewing advisor. Touch L11 and be sure to snap on the presser foot S. The S foot is used for all Omnimotion sewing. Place the patch on the denim and begin sewing across the top of the patch from the top left corner. The arrow on the program display above the SM, which stands for side motion, indicates the sewing direction. Sew across the top of the patch, then touch reverse to change sewing direction. The directional arrow will also change on the program display, showing the direction you're sewing. Continue sewing around the patch now, touching reverse each time you need to change direction. You may want to experiment with several of the other 4-way stitches. Think about patching a leg on your free arm. Won't that be great? Because you have a choice of 6 different utility mending stitches, you can select the one that's perfect for your fabric weight and garment style. L1, the tricot stitch or lightning stitch, is perfect for lightweight knits and wovens. L2, the 3-step zigzag, would be for medium weight fabrics. L3, the satin stitch in 4 directions, creates the look of applique. And L11, 12, and 13 would be used for heavier fabrics such as denim and canvas to stitch a strong, durable, attractive patch, perfect for adding design detail. You can use L2 to seam elastic into a circle as well for a strong seam. Isn't that great? Well, have you ever wished that you could sew in any direction? On your Viking Husqvarna number 1, you simply touch the arrow on the L cassette and sew. Your Viking will sew in that direction, the direction of the arrow. No need to pivot or turn fabric ever again at corners. A whole new fast way of sewing thanks to Viking. Simply touch stop to tie off. Sew now on a piece of denim. Enter woven heavy into the sewing advisor and touch L23. Of course, use presser foot S and begin sewing. You'll be sewing in the direction of the arrow on L23 automatically. Touch L33 to change direction. Continue to touch the arrow of your choice and experiment with Omnimotion stitching. You can even create little pictures with this directional sewing. Well, thanks to Omnimotion, we can create extra wide edgings and scallops. Row 4 of the L cassette features those beautiful wide scallops at a touch on your Viking number 1. I have some samples to share with you. Some napkins, some table linens, some lingerie, some collars and cuffs. All these things are so possible quickly and easily. And of course, we can use side-to-side mirror image to eliminate feeding the bulk of a project through the arm of your Viking. Program scallops for additional design possibilities. Use woven medium fabric now with stitch and tear underneath to stabilize. Enter woven medium on your sewing advisor and touch L14. Be sure you have presser foot S in place and stitch and tear underneath. Stitch a row of scallops 1 inch from the edge. Anytime you wish to stop, touch stop. Rhonda, you'll notice, has beautiful scallops on the yoke of her garment, and I have some other scallop designs that I'd like to share with you. This dress, of course, has some very pretty wide scallop designs that trim the front. And underneath, I have a collar that's been done with twin needle wide scallops. You can actually program the edging stitches for additional possibilities. And Rhonda, I know, has a sample there of L44 programmed with the side-to-side mirror image. And I have another one here that has a wide scallop that's been programmed as well. So you can get the idea of the unlimited decorative possibilities using your extra wide scallops and trims. Now, one of the other beautiful things that involves the Omnimotion stitching is on row 5 of the L Cassette. And row 5 of the L Cassette stitches large flower, leaf, and vine motifs. Now they too will sew continuously, and when you want to stop, you simply tie off. Why don't you stitch one now? You can program side-to-side mirror image on the row 5 stitches, and they can be programmed with one another or with other decorative stitches for beautiful borders and designs. We're stitching L35, and of course we hope you're using that S foot, because all Omnimotion stitches need that S foot. In the illustration in your handbook, you have the starting point and the sewing direction indicated. You can program flower and vine programs, L15 in program with L35, for example, and you may want to take time to stop the tape and stitch a row of this program. Mirror image it if you desire. Won't it be fun to embellish some of your garments with some of these beautiful stitches? And actually, under my lettering, I have the leaf program stitched to form somewhat of a holly effect. Now, if you're wondering about the Merry Christmas, we're going to get to that later, and I'll be telling you how to stitch that. Great! Wasn't that fun? And easy. One touch does it all on your Viking #1. Now, the L Cassette also features beautiful Omnigrams. These are the large designs. Let me get a couple to show you. On my little boy's outfit here, I have a teddy bear, and on my t-shirt, an anchor. And then I thought you might enjoy the fact that this scallop edging is incorporated with a pretty little palm tree. And that was sewn with 2 colors of thread through the same eye of the same needle to match a skirt. To do Omnigrams, we simply touch the picture of the Omnigram and sew. It's that easy. We'll use a medium weight fabric with stitch and tear stabilizer. And why not touch L47, the sewing machine? Or maybe you'd like to choose a different Omnigram. Go ahead. Be sure that you use that presser foot S and that you have stitch and tear under your fabric when sewing Omnigrams. The illustration on page F of your handbook shows the starting point and the sewing direction. And all Omnigrams will stop automatically when they're completed. Now, the Pictograms and So Much More book will include a template for starting and stopping as well. So this too is another option for you. The last row on the L Cassette contains the balancing feature for Omnigrams. Should you be sewing on a specialty fabric, and the balance is based on the finishing point of the Omnigram, but will balance the entire Omnigram. L with the arrow up moves the finishing point up. L with the arrow down moves the finishing point down. S with the arrow right moves the finishing point right. And S with the arrow left moves the finishing point left. Why don't you sew another of your choice for us, Rhonda, while I give some hints for successful Omnigram sewing. #1, be sure to use the S foot as recommended by the info display for all Omnigram L and M cassette sewing. Be sure to place stitch and tear or a similar stabilizer under the fabric before stitching, and that will be recommended by the info display. Number 3, always use quality thread. And a decorative thread, such as a sulky rayon 30 weight, will give you the most beautiful Omnigram sewing. 4, Omnigram on natural fiber woven fabrics whenever possible. And 5, very important, do not hold the fabric back while you're sewing. Simply guide it to keep it from shifting sideways. Omnigrams are easy and fun and can personalize just anything you're making. And Rhonda's doing one of those great big designs for us that you could place on a blouse or a dress and have a one-of-a-kind creative garment. In fact, they're so big, sometimes we start in the wrong place, right? You run right off the fabric, and that can happen. It's good to sew a sample of your Omnigram first, especially when you first get your number 1, so that you feel really comfortable with the direction it's going to sew, and you get used to side motion stitching. In fact, that does take a little getting used to, because you're not used to that sideward movement of the fabric. Isn't this a beautiful one? Boy, that would really be pretty on a blouse. Well, we hope you're having fun, but we have something else to share with you, and that is that you can program your own personal Omnigram designs. You can combine stitches or pictograms with the Omnimotion straight stitches, the ones indicated by the arrows. And each time that one of these arrow buttons is touched while you're in program, 2 directional straight stitches at a 0.8 stitch length will be entered. This will be indicated by an SM on the program display. And you can combine any stitch from any cassette with Omnimotion. Well, the possibilities are really endless, and the width too. And to simplify the programming, you can actually hold a stitch in the clear memory and continue to enter it without changing cassettes. Now let's try the following program together, and stay right with me. First, we'll select Program, and we'll select an empty memory or clear a memory, so your program display should be empty. Rhonda's put in the D cassette, and she's going to touch D14. That's the little flower, but don't enter it yet. She touched D14, but she's going to clear it, and her program display is blank again. Now touch clear again, and it will bring it back in the clear memory. Now enter it. Okay, D14 is in your clear memory, and you'll understand this later because it's going to save you some time, because each time you touch clear, the stitch will appear and can be entered. No need to keep putting our D cassette back in. All right, insert that L cassette. You're way ahead of us there, and we're ready to go. Insert the L cassette and touch L23 and enter. And do this 5 times, because each time we enter L23, we're entering that direction. Now touch clear. What happens? Our little flower comes up, and enter it. Let's touch L23 5 times again to move that flower further to the side in our stitch process. And once we've entered it 5 times again, touch clear and enter it. That brings that flower up and enters. Once more, let's put L23 in, because we're moving sideward at the motion of that 2 stitches per entry. And touch clear and enter. Now, how about we go back the other way? Should we do that now? We did L23. To go back the other way, touch L21 and enter it. Do this 5 times. And you'll be entering 5 times 2 or 10 stitches in that direction. Touch clear again, enter the flower, and then enter L21 5 times again. This is all explained in your book, and you can do it as many times as you want. Once you have as many side motion stitches entered as you desire, simply touch repeat, and go ahead and stitch a row of this wide personal Omnigram. Here again, we're using a medium weight fabric, and we have stabilized it with stitch and tear. You can program Omnigram borders as wide as you desire. You simply add more directional stitches, more L23s or more L21s. Are we running out of bobbin thread? Sure. Oh, we can show you a great tip. That's super. I heard that little beep, beep, beep. Because if you're in the middle of a design like this and your Viking says you're running out of bobbin thread, simply remove the bobbin and put in a bobbin wound from another spool, or we actually had an extra one wound. Slip it into your Viking, trim off that excess bobbin thread in there, cut it, and keep sewing. This is a Viking exclusive, and is that great? All you that have ever run out of a bobbin in the middle of a buttonhole or in the middle of a decorative stitch, you know what a disaster that can be, and that you have to start over or have to try to match up. And you will see now that Rhonda just changed her bobbin and started sewing immediately again, and her beautiful personal Omnigram is untouched on the top. We never broke that top thread. Of course, in this case, if we hadn't had a bobbin wound, we'd have wound it from a separate spool. Okay, let's take a look at that beautiful wide personal Omnigram. Truly, the creative possibilities and the width of the stitch is virtually unlimited with your big memory in your Viking. Okay, what about monograms? I told you we'd get back to how to do Merry Christmas in a little bit, and I think I've lost it. But in essence, we have large script letters and numbers on the M cassette, okay? And these letters can be programmed, or they can be stitched singly, and they can be sewn in upper or in lower case. There's an illustration on page I in your handbook, and the arrow indicates the starting point and the X the finishing point. Now, the two different styles of S I want you to point out to them, Rhonda, the European S within the alphabet, and then one in the center of the bottom row of stitches is the one that most Americans want to use. So keep that in mind and try them both. Let's do a monogram just in the normal mode first. Just have us in normal. We'll use a medium weight woven fabric with stitch and tear, and of course we'll use that S foot. We have M cassette, and we're going to touch the letter H for Husqvarna, okay? And simply sew, and we will have an H. Now touch stop, of course, to get that one H, and we have one letter H. You can sew them singly if you desire, but we're going to show you how to put them into program next, right? Won't it be fun to personalize and make beautiful gifts? Pillowcases with wide scallops and personal monograms, or his and hers. What fun to make gifts to give on your beautiful new Viking #1. All right, what a pretty letter. Well, would you like to know how to put them in program? We'll first put uppercase letters in program. Touch program, of course. Bring it up on the display, and then touch L and enter with the right cursor arrow, and touch H and enter. Now touch repeat to put yourself into the sewing mode, and go ahead and stitch those two uppercase letters. The stitch that joins them can be removed later, of course, with a seam ripper. And the programming possibilities are endless. Remember that you can actually put in up to 567 stitches. I must confess, I've never put in that many stitches into my Viking. I've always had plenty of memory. That'd be a lot of monograms, wouldn't it? When you're putting your letters into monogram, you have two choices on the stop. You can either touch stop after you're in repeat, or you can actually put the stop into program. And we're going to do that next to share that technique with you. But there's our L and H. Well, let's do some programming of upper and lower case. Touch the select function to program, okay? And let's then touch V, okay? For Viking, of course, and enter. Now, to have the rest of the word in lowercase, touch the upper and lowercase button on the bottom row. It's an A, an uppercase and a lowercase A. Touch it once, and then touch I. Okay, when you touch the I, you'll notice that all the letters will be entered in lowercase, but they'll actually appear on the program display as an uppercase letter at half width. Now enter the rest of the word. K, enter, I, enter, N, enter, G, but don't enter yet, because what we'll do is enter stop with that G. Stop, enter, and then touch repeat, and sew the word Viking. Anytime you would want uppercase again, you'd simply touch the upper and lowercase letter key again. You can experiment with other letters and numbers and with other omnigrams on the last row of the M cassette, and keep all your samples for future reference. One of the great things about the Viking monogramming on the M cassette is that it sews both above and below the line, as in the K and the G of Viking. And of course that there's no hoop needed, so that you can sew a long word like Merry Christmas, or if you have an extra long name, for example. Won't it be fun to personalize and monogram with your new Viking #1? All right, there we wrote Viking in upper and lower case. Well, Rhonda and I have been pleased to be with you to share the exciting uses of your Viking #1. And your Viking Husqvarna is completely portable for easy toting to class, for taking to your summer place, or for fun sewing gatherings with your friends.